Today we're going over chapter 20 of the Silmarillion of the 5th battle, Nirnaeth Arnoediad. If you're new here, welcome to our Halfling. We talk about Lord of the Rings and sometimes about D&D. So let's get started. So this chapter begins kind of as a short recap of Beren and Luthien and saying that, now Beren and Luthien have been returned to their physical forms in Doriath, and that everybody is really glad to see Beren and, Luthien kind of out of her state. But they're also a little afraid of just what has happened. I mean, no one's come back from the dead before, and so this is something new. And it says that Luthien, goes and heals Thingol, and there, from his winter feeling, and in that moment, she, looks at Melion, and here Melion really, she sees what Luthien has done. She looks into her eyes and realizes that her daughter is now mortal, and that she's going to die and pass on, and that she won't be in the Hall of Mondos, and that basically Melion is never going to be able to see her daughter again. She realizes that she's now been separated from her daughter in a way that no one else can understand. And in this moment, no one else has ever had the grief that Melion had to deal with in that moment. And so it says that Beren and Luthien then leave Menegroth and they go live the rest of their lives at Tolkien, where no one sees them, no one speaks to them anymore, and in fact, when they died is unknown, and where their bodies are laid are completely unknown to the world. So continuing on now, we see that Madros is now realizing that there is a possibility to go up against Morgoth, that we've now had a mortal man do it, and, Luthien was able to go right into his throne room and take one of the Silmarils. So it's not impossible, but Madros does know that everybody needs to be united and back together in order to fight against Morgoth. And this now begins the union of Madros, where Madros begins to gather everyone in Beleriand together, elves, men, and dwarves all coming together. However, not everybody wanted to unite with the Sons of Feanor, including Nargothrond, and Arnoediad, who is still very upset with Celegorm and Curufin, are wanting to keep Nargothrond secret, and so they're not real keen on joining in with one of the Sons of Feanor. But there is a small company within Nargothrond that does want to go, and they're led by Gwyndor, son of Gullion, who had lost his brother Gelmir in the Dagor Bragolag. And he does choose to take the small company north, and he bears the House of Fingolfin and the banners of Fingon, and he is, he goes to fight. And he will actually be the only one to return to Nargothrond. So Thingol is of no help in this moment. He refuses to give the Silmaril over to the Sons of Feanor, which their oath is kind of binding them to retrieve it from Thingol, so they need to have it. And Melion is advising Thingol, hey, you need to give this back to them. We don't need to have it, you need to give it to them. But Thingol is filled with hatred and just grief. He's received this letter from the Sons of Feanor saying that he needs to return the Silmaril to them. It's not his to keep. But the letter is filled with so much haughtiness and pride that it makes Thingol want to keep it. In that moment, maybe out of pettiness, but really the curse of the Silmaril has sort of taken effect on him where he wants to possess it for himself. And he also doesn't appreciate the threats that the Sons of Feanor are giving him, and he also realizes the grief in retrieving this, that in retrieving the Silmaril, he's lost his daughter out of this. Beren and Luthien had to go through a tremendous amount of grief and sorrow and pain to retrieve this Silmaril, and he's supposed to just hand it over. So he's not real keen on this, and again, because of the curse of the Silmaril, he wants to keep it for himself. And so Thingol tells the Sons of Feanor, no, I'm keeping it. Well, Madros isn't saying anything. He's just okay, whatever. He's got bigger issues to deal with right now. He's trying to get everybody gathered up to fight against Morgoth. But Celegorm and Curufin, they send a message back to Thingol saying that if they come out of the battle victorious, they will kill Thingol for the Silmaril unless he hands it over to them before the battle is complete. And Thingol, with no intent to join the battle, to give over the Silmaril, he fortifies Doriath, and basically no one is allowed in or out to join the battle, except for Mablung and Beleg, who have pleaded with Thingol, and basically they refuse to not be allowed to go to battle. And so Thingol gives them leave to go and join. But on one condition, that they cannot serve under the son of Feanor, and so they go under service for the host of Fingon. Now, Madros has the help of the dwarves, both in strength and in gear and weapons, so the dwarves are aiding them in creating armor and weapons for this fight. Men also have now gathered together under the Union, including Bor and Ulfang, who were Easterling groups that came, after the first wave of men. So they've come, and these two groups are now wanting to also join in the fight. And they're now being trained for war on how to fight and everything. And Fingon takes counsel in Himring, and the Noldor in Hithlam and the House of Hador are all joining together and preparing for battle. So you got everybody sort of coming together in this moment. And Turgon, the High King, is also preparing for battle as well. Now it says that Madros seems to have attacked too soon, and that he waited a little bit longer. Maybe things sort of played out differently. But the orcs seem to be pushed out of the northern regions of Beleriand, but Morgoth had men who were in strong allegiance with him kind of already embedded into the host of Feanor. So Madros, obviously unaware of this, decides it's time to attack. And so with one group coming from the east and one group coming from the west with banners held high, the hope was to come at Angband and be able to attack and destroy from both sides, right? And the signal to begin this march would be a beacon lit in Dorthonion. On the day of the attack, at the rising of the sun, the trumpets of the Eldar are played, and from the east comes the sons of Feanor, and from the west, the host of Fingon, High King of the Noldor. Well, Fingon, looking out from Ethel Sirion, sees that his host is still hidden, but knows that it is great, filled with elves of Hithlam and many from the Falas, and the company of Gwendor from Nargothrond, and men of Hurin, Huer, and Haldir of Brethil. Fingon then looks towards Thangorodrim, where he sees a dark cloud beginning to grow and knows that Morgoth is essentially accepting their challenge of battle. And looking off to the east, he expects to see the smoke and dust of the host of Madros walking across on Falglith. And he's unaware at this moment that Madros has actually been deceived by Uldor the Accursed, who has lied to Madros about an attack from Angband. And so nobody's coming at that moment. But now a great cry goes out as the grand host of the Gondolindrum, led by Turgon, comes to their side. And Fingon, seeing his brother Turgon, is filled with this renewed hope that maybe they'll come out of this victorious. Maybe they've got enough men now to attack Morgoth. Now Morgoth, having spies and servants everywhere, is not caught by surprise at all by this attack. And in fact, he's the one who's choosing the hour to attack. And he has now sent his own servants across on Falglith towards the host of Fingon, all covered with like a robe or something that covers up all of their shining armor so that nobody can see them shining as they march across. And this host is able to get extremely close to the host of Fingon. And the Noldor do eventually see this group, and they begin to grow impatient, waiting for the signal of the approaching host of Madros. Well, Hurin is telling everybody, wait, we don't do anything. Morgoth is always stronger than he looks. He's very deceitful. We need to wait until the orcs get to the hills, and then they'll have to, separate themselves to get around the hills. However, Morgoth has told the orcs to draw out Fingon. So now we have both groups sort of waiting to draw the other one out. But in the waiting, the captain of the orcs leads a group to the outposts of Fingon, where Fingon's hosts can now see the eyes of the enemies. They're both there waiting for the signal, right? In the impatience of waiting, and Morgoth having told this group that they need to draw Fingon out, the captain of the orcs sends a rider with a token of parley to Bad Ethel, and with them is Gelmir, son of Gulin, brother to Gwyndor, who was captured in Dagor Bragollach. And Gelmir has been blinded. And the servants of Morgoth cry out that they have many more in Angband that they have captured and tortured. Unless they hurry to start this attack and kill all of the orcs are going to go back to Angband and kill everyone. And in this moment, they cut off Gelmir's hands, feet, and finally his head, and the sight of all of the elves. And the orcs just walk away, leaving the body behind. And of course, Gwyndor was right there when this was happening, and he's no longer willing to wait. He has grown vengeful and patient, and he's just ready to attack. And so Gwyndor jumps on his horse in rageful madness and leads an attack against all of these messengers, kills them, and then continues leading his small company towards the main host. And because of this, all the Noldor are like, all right, let's get this started. And they get ready to fight. And Fingon puts on his white helm, and the sounds of trumpets go, and Hithlum rides to attack now. So the host of Fingon it says that they're swift and powerful in their attack, and that this almost ruins Morgoth's plans. Like, he wasn't expecting this sort of reaction, and it's a massacre. So before Morgoth's full host, though, could even reach Fingon, Fingon's group has already reached them and slaughtered them. And with the banner of Fingon flowing proudly across Anfauglith to the walls of Angband. Now Gwyndor and his company from Nargothrond remain in the front the whole time, and they actually ride to the gates of Angband, kill the guards on the stairs, and make their way down to Morgoth's throne, where they're banging on his door. And it says that Morgoth is trembling and shaking in this moment because he's like, oh, I wasn't expecting this reaction. But it didn't matter, because Morgoth actually had a host of servants still, guarding Angband, and Gwyndor and his company are now basically surrounded and trapped at the doors of Morgoth's throne, and are all slaughtered and killed except for Gwyndor, who's able to escape. Now Fingon is unable to come and save them because they're actually being attacked at the walls of Angband, where many of that host is actually lost. So now we're at the fourth day where this battle really begins. Nirnaeth Arnoediad, or Unnumbered Tears. Now Fingon's host had to retreat, and they didn't have a choice in this moment. Gwyndor's company went too far, they're lost. Fingon's group is losing way too many, and so they're forced to retreat. And in the rear of that group is Haldir, Lord of Haladin, and he's killed along with most of the men of Brethil. And on the fifth day at night, the host was still far from Ered Wethrin, and they're attacked by another host of orcs. And they fight until morning, and hope was almost lost when now they hear the horns and see the shining armor of Turgon and the main host of Gondolin. So this group was actually protecting the pass of Sirion, and Turgon was holding his host back from rashly attacking everyone or attacking all the orcs. But seeing the attack on his brother, he rushes out to his aid. And so a group of Turgon's guards are able to sort of break through the ranks and get to Fingon. And here, Fingon is standing next to Hurin, and so it says that though brief, the meeting between Turgon and Hurin is actually glad, and that hope is now renewed in all the hearts of the elves, because at this time, they also hear the trumpets of Madros. And now Madros is finally coming to attack from behind the orcs that are attacking Fingon. And it said that the battle may have been won that day if everyone had stayed united. But there was evil in the host of Feanor. And at this time, Morgoth releases his last wave of strength from Ongon with wolves, wolf riders, Balrogs, dragons, and Glaurung, the father of dragons. Now, Glaurung is even stronger and more terrifying than he was before. And he's able to get between the host of Madros before they get to the host of Fingon. And that even in this moment, even with the wolves and wolf riders and dragons and everything, Morgoth still wouldn't have been able to come out victorious if we didn't have the betrayal of men. And at this moment, the truth of Ulfang is finally revealed. And many of the Easterlings get away from the hosts of Feanor and they side with Morgoth. And now we have men fighting men, and basically your own group fighting each other. And so the men are now attacking the sons of Feanor from behind. Out of all this confusion, the host of Morgoth are able to get closer to the host of Madros. And in this moment, Maglor kills Uldor the Accursed, and the sons of Bor kill Ulfast and Ulwerth. But unknown to all, Uldor had already called for more men from the other side, from east side of Middle Earth, who were waiting and kept hidden in the eastern hills, so that now the host of Madros is being attacked from 3 sides. But fate was on the sides of the sons of Feanor, that none of them are killed, but all of them are injured. And the sons of Feanor basically are able to come back together. They gather any of the Noldor, any dwarves that are still left, and they flee the battle, and they go towards Mount Domed in the east. Now, the last of the eastern forces to stand strong were the dwarves. The strength was renowned, and the dwarves are able to withstand a great deal of heat. And it says that they wear these hideous masks that frightens the orcs and the dragons, and that they end up surrounding Glaurung and were just beating the bejeebers out of him. They were just swinging their axes like crazy, and that Glaurung's scales armor was only able to withstand so much of it, and he was getting really mad that all these dwarves were taking him out. And in this frustration, Glaurung swings and hits Asgal, the lord of Belagast, and basically walks over his body. And in Asgal's last moment, he takes his knife and just stabs and cuts into the belly of Glaurung. And he cuts into him so badly that Glaurung is forced to leave battle, and in Glaurung leaving the battle causes all the other dragons to be like, okay, peace, we're out of here. And in this moment, as the dragons are fleeing these dwarves, the dwarves just walk into battle, pick up their lord, sing this, mournful funeral song, and just walk out of battle. It says that no one even dares mess with them, that they just walk out carrying their lord, which I think is just awesome. Another reason to love dwarves. Now, the western forces with Fingon and Turgon were being attacked by a force 3 times their size, including Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs, which, if you've forgotten, is the one who gave the final blow to Feanor, killing him. Now, Gothmog has separated Fingon from Turgon and Hurin, casting those two aside and leaving Fingon on his own. And soon, all of Fingon's men are killed, and he alone fights Gothmog until another Balrog has to come in from behind and hits Fingon, allowing Gothmog to give the final blow to Fingon, killing Fingon. And so dies the High King of the Noldor. And all that are left are Hurin, Huor, and the House of Hador's hosts, and Turgon. So with these left, they're now protecting the pass of Sirion. And Hurin tells Turgon that he needs to leave, that if he's going to leave, this is the time to leave. And, as long as Turgon's still alive and Gondolin is still going, then Morgoth will have something to fear. Well, Turgon says that Gondolin can't remain a secret anymore, that they're kind of been revealed, and it's only a matter of time before they're discovered and fall. Then Huor says that while it still stands, hope for men and elves will come from their house. And that now, and it says with the eyes of death, Huor can see that though he may never see Gondolin again, that from their two houses will come a star. Now, creepy Maglin is nearby when all of this is said, and it says that he never forgets these words but doesn't say anything in this moment. So Turgon listens to this counsel, heeds this advice, and takes the remaining hosts of Gondolin, and they leave. So the men of Dor-lómin guard the rear as Hurin and Huor desired. They never wanted to leave the northern lands, and they were going to die defending them. So the last stand of men of Dor-lómin is forever remembered and honored. Turgon fights his way to get past the guard of Hurin and Huor, and then is able to escape along the river Sirion. And Turgon was able to hide himself again from Morgoth. And it says that Hurin and Huor stood together at Rivell, where they stood their ground, going no further. They weren't going to go any further than this point right here. And on the 6th day, the servants of Morgoth are continuing to pursue the men and use dead bodies to create this bridge over the stream to get to Hurin and Huor and their host. And in this last moment, they finally surround Hithlum, and as the day comes to its end, Huor is struck with a venomous arrow right in the eye, and all their men are killed. Hurin stands alone, and casting aside his shield, he wields his axe with 2 hands, and he is just going down in a blaze of glory. And it's sung that Hurin's axe began to smoke with the black blood of Gothmog on it, that he struck Gothmog 70 times before being taken alive to go to Morgoth. And even in this moment, orcs had to grapple Hurin, and Hurin it says that while he's being grappled, like the orc's hands are like stuck to him, but he's like hacked off the orc's arms, and it requires another group of orcs to like dogpile on top of him to take him down, and Gothmog has to tie him up and drag him to Morgoth. Like, dude, that's amazing. So this ends Nirnaeth Arnoediad. Night falls on Hithlum, and a great storm is now seen coming from the west. And this was a great win for Morgoth, and his plan for the men to turn on their own group was exactly like he wanted it to be. And because of this betrayal, elves and men basically separate themselves. They don't trust each other anymore, except for the 3 houses, which are Bor, Haleth, and Hador. Any other men don't really have an allegiance with elves anymore. So now the realm of Fingon is completely gone, completely destroyed. And the sons of Feanor are basically broken up and spread apart and are just wandering the woods and living with green elves of Osirion. And few of the men still actually remain in Brethil, with Handir, son of Haldir, who's now their lord. And Hithlum has no survivors from Fingon's host or the House of Hador, and they haven't actually received any news of the battle. Now Morgoth has promised all these Easterlings that if they were to fight with him, that they would receive, rich lands. But this promise isn't kept. Instead, they're all put into Hithlum and kind of kept prisoners there, and their reward basically is that they get to torture the old women and the children of men. And the Eldar of Hithlum are taken to the mines up north for labor, except for a few that do manage to escape into the mountains. Orcs now are able to roam freely, and they go further south all the way to Nantathrin, or the Land of Willows, and the borders of Osirion. So they're just kind of free to go wherever they want. Dordiath still stands, and Nargothrond remains hidden. And it says that Morgoth didn't much care about these two, either because he didn't have enough information about them, or it just wasn't their time in his, great malice plan. And so he just doesn't really take much concern with them at this point. Many take refuge behind Círdan's walls in the havens, but when winter comes, Morgoth sends a host that way to destroy them. And so the Falas are destroyed, and he takes control over Brith Thumbad and Eglarest. And the havens are completely in ruin, and most of Círdan's people are either enslaved or killed. And some are able to escape by ship, including Gil-galad, son of Fingon. Now, this group sails to the Isle of Balar, and they're able to make refuge and were able to keep control of the mouth of Sirion, where they had many ships built there and laid hidden. Now, Turgon, hearing all of this, sends a messenger to Círdan asking for aid. And by this request, Círdan builds 7 ships, and they sail to the west to ask aid of the Valar, but none ever come back to Balar except for one. That these ships were actually caught in a big storm within the side of Middle-earth, and that only one was able to be saved by Olmo from the wrath of Ose. And the one that was saved was Voronwe, and he was one of the messengers sent by Turgon from Gondolin. Now, Turgon is growing fearful because he knows that out of all of the Noldor, Morgoth fears him the most and wants control of him the most. And so Turgon's really unable to enjoy this victory because he knows that, evil is still looming in the background, that, the fall of Gondolin is soon to come. Now, at this point, Hurin is being brought to Morgoth in order to find Turgon. Now, Hurin doesn't say anything, and he decides instead to mock Morgoth. Well, in retaliation of this, Morgoth curses Hurin and his wife Morwen and all of their children, laying basically a lifetime of pain and sorrow on them. And Hurin is placed on a chair made of stone at one of the peaks of Thangorodrim, as this is his prison, his punishment. And Morgoth, standing next to him, says that because of his mockery, Hurin is now doomed to remain in the spot, seeing everything that Morgoth can see and hearing everything that Morgoth can hear. And that he will remain this way until the curse comes to pass, until it ends. And it said that Hurin never pleaded for mercy and never asked for death for himself or any of his family. And finally, by the order of Morgoth, the orcs gather all of the dead together and place them in this pile in Anfauglith, creating a great hill that can be seen far off. And it's called Hauth and Nindengen, the Hill of Tears. However, grass would eventually grow on this hill that is completely isolated in this great deserted area. And no servant of Morgoth even dares to walk on this hill where the swords of the Eldar and Edain laid rusted and crumbled. Well, there you have it, another chapter down with a lot of killing and a lot of death, a lot of fighting, and just wow. But Hurin is amazing. Loved him. The dwarves. Oh my goodness, the dwarves are fantastic. I love dwarves. That is just amazing. In the middle of fighting, not only do they attack the dragon so much that the dragon has to leave, causing all the other dragons to flee out of fear, but also that they're just like, we're done fighting, we're going to take our lord and you're going to leave us alone. And everybody's like, deal. That's awesome. I love it so stinking much. But there we go. So I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. I did. I loved reading about the dwarves and Hurin and everybody. Just a lot of valor, and just everyone is fighting for, what's right. And it'll be a while before we see any of the Valar do anything. It's very frustrating. But you know what? These elves, men, and dwarves are holding their own. So it's impressive, and I'm glad to be reading their tale. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, blessed week, and may your homes be filled with food and cheer. Bye.